Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. And this is a preview for Real Madrid versus Chelsea. I'm really nervous for this game. I'm excited, but I'm also nervous. And I'm so happy to be joined once again by the lovely Semra Hunter, presenter for La Liga TV. Semra, thank you so much for joining me. How's it going?
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me again. It's going really, really well, and I'm really looking forward to the game tomorrow, I have to say.
Nice. So I'm super excited to get all of your thoughts. So just starting things off, looking at La Liga, I know the first thing that a lot of Chelsea fans are going to do is look at La Liga table. And Real Madrid currently sit 13th points off Barcelona, still in second, but that's quite a big difference given how tight I feel that they normally are. So what do you think has been the reason for such a big difference in the two sides?
I think one of the main reasons is that they always go for the Champions League. There's no doubt that that is their number one target and aim each and every season. And I think going into this one, they said, you know what, let's make it back-to-back champions again, guys. We can do it, right? And so I think that's always the main focus. And when any player arrives or any manager arrives to the club, they'll tell you that that's pretty much the first order of business that they're told that they have to do is you have to win the Champions League. And so La Liga, unfortunately, is kind of always put a little bit on the back seat, a little bit on the back burner. It's not their main priority, even though, of course, they want to win league. Don't get me wrong. But if they had to pick between the two, it would always be to win in Europe. And so I think, obviously, it's been a weird season with the World Cup in between. Benzema's had a lot of injuries, so he hasn't been on the extraordinary form that he was on last season, picking up the Ballon d'Or. There's been other injuries. A lot of things have been happening at the back in particular. The back line has changed a lot. They've made a lot more mistakes at the back this season than last season. Actually, they ran a pretty tight ship, if memory serves me well. But this campaign, for whatever reason, they seem to be a lot more prone to errors. And so I think that their focus, their priorities, and with so much going on, it's just kind of been elsewhere. And so I think when they realized that Barcelona were probably going to run away with the league, they figured, okay, you know what, guys, let's just kind of reserve our energies, channel our energies, and decide ultimately what we want to focus on the most. And that obviously is the Champions League and the Cup now that they've made it into the final. And this is kind of the time of the year when Real Madrid start to sit up a little bit taller and they start to really kind of get sharp and focused, and they can smell the silverware coming. And so they become a completely different beast. But yeah, I think at this stage, La Liga is beyond them. So unfortunately, that's not a good thing for Chelsea.
I was gonna say, like, this is not boding well for us because a lot of, at least I saw on social media, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, haha, Real Madrid lost at the weekend, 3-2 against Villarreal," but they did beat Barcelona 4-0 in the Copa del Rey semifinal midweek. And at least what I noticed was that it seemed like there was a lot of rotation in that side that did lose to Villarreal. And so it looked to me that Carlo Ancelotti was already preparing, like, okay, I'm going to rest a decent amount of players, a good chunk of the team, so that they're ready for the Chelsea game midweek.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that goes to show you the kind of mentality that Real Madrid have and how they can switch it off or switch it on. And so when it came to that game against Barcelona, first of all, it's a Clásico. So you're always going to go out and win a Clásico. It doesn't matter what competition it is. That's always going to be your aim. But there was the added bonus that they lost the first leg. They could win at the Spotify Camp Nou, and it would take them into a final. So Real Madrid knew what was at stake, and knew that they had to perform a lot better than they had been in order to do that. And that's the thing about Real Madrid. They don't even necessarily have to play well. They just know how to win. And so that's what they did. In La Liga, yes, he rotated massively, 6 players out that will most likely be starting against Chelsea. This is not something that Ancelotti typically tends to do. Some rotations, but not so much in one game. And I think that just shows you where his head is at, that he's elsewhere, already focused on the next game against his former club, and obviously getting through to the next round where they potentially have some really stiff competition, whether it's going to be Manchester City or Bayern Munich. And the other thing is he kind of used the game against Villarreal to experiment a little bit in terms of a formation and a system, because normally you would say, okay, 4-3-3, but actually it was more like a 4-2-3-1, with Asensio playing as like an attacking midfielder and coming up through the middle at times, not necessarily always playing out wide. And so it kind of depended on what his role was and where he was on the pitch that would ultimately determine what kind of shape they were playing. But sometimes it left them a little bit exposed because they would only have two midfielders, and then all of a sudden you have Villarreal, who are very good at coming and building up and hitting you on the break if they need to, or whatever it is in a given situation. But it didn't really work for them. Let's just put it that way. They were a little bit attack heavy and didn't really have too much left at the back to help them out whenever Villarreal came forward. And they were outnumbered in the midfield. There's no question about that. So I don't think that's something he's going to do against Chelsea. I think he'll go back to a 4-3-3. He'll probably go with Rodrigo, who's been in form in the last few weeks, along with Benzema and Vinicius Jr., and then probably Luka Modric, Toni Kroos, and I would imagine maybe Camavinga, unless he plays at left back, which is something that he's been doing at times. But I expect that the experiments will be over. And maybe even Valverde might be somewhere in the mix too. So expect a very strong 11.
It's super interesting because that's one of the things that I noticed. I think it was versus Barcelona that Camavinga was playing left back. So I wanted to ask you, are there any injury issues? Like, are there any players that we should be expected out? And who do you think is going to play in that defense? Because you mentioned that it's been changing a lot. Like, I would expect Carvajal to be back in this side, maybe Militao as well. I know that Camavinga has been playing left back. Sometimes Alaba plays left back. So what do you kind of expect there?
Well, I would say that, I mean, obviously Mendy's out, so he has to put somebody in the left back position, which is what he's had to do pretty much all season long. It could be Alaba. It could be Camavinga. It depends on if he wants to have Tchouaméni or if he wants to have Valverde in the midfield or what he wants to do. Carvajal, unfortunately, has not been playing very well the last few weeks, so there is a potential for Lucas Vázquez to maybe start there, but it depends on if he wants to be more offensive or if he wants to be more defensive, because Lucas Vázquez is a winger. I mean, he's a converted right back, wing back, but his defending skills are not, in theory, as good as Carvajal whenever he's at his best. I think Militao will come back into the side. He's been playing really well lately. Rudiger, I'm not entirely sure if he's going to start or not against his ex-side. But I do think that, I'm trying to think, who would it be? So then it would be Alaba, maybe, Militao, potentially Camavinga, or Nacho, actually. Nacho, I think, may have a good chance of starting at left back or right back or anywhere, really, because he's pretty much a utility defender. You can put him anywhere you want and he'll deliver for you. So I would say that might be the only area where there could be a little bit of a question mark as to what Carlo Ancelotti is going to do. But I would say he's probably going to put out a fairly defensive back line and then maybe keep someone like Lucas Vázquez as an option if need be for later on in the game.
And do you think that that's an area that Chelsea could potentially exploit if this back line has been changed a bit, or if there's a player playing slightly out of position?
Yeah, I think so, considering that they have been making mistakes at the back. Courtois, thankfully for them, has been in pretty good form, so he tends to be able to deny any kind of threat or nullify any kind of threat if it comes his way. But I suspect there could be room for Chelsea to do a little bit of damage against the back line, whoever they put out. That said, though, I mean, Chelsea are really struggling for goals, aren't they? I mean, I think they are averaging less than a goal a game, which there's only 6 other teams in the Premier League that have the same kind of goal scoring ratio and stats. And then obviously you've been missing a killer centre forward pretty much all season long, right? Someone who's going to score lots of goals for you. So I'm not entirely sure maybe where the goals will come from. Maybe Sterling, for example, or I'm not sure who else. But I do think that there is a very real opportunity for whoever plays in the front three for Chelsea, that they can actually maybe score some goals against Madrid. They're not bulletproof at the back.
Yeah, it's quite crazy because Chelsea haven't scored in their last 3 games, so we haven't scored a goal in like almost a month, essentially. And I do think that Joao Felix and Kai Havertz are going to be starting. the thing is that they have been missing a lot of big chances that you see every match. Chelsea create one, two, three big chances, but they miss all of them. Like,
Mm.
I surely feel that it must be some sort of record. Do you think this question actually just came to me off the top of my head, but do you think that Joao Felix is going to have like any advantage knowing, having played, I mean, a lot of this Chelsea team have played against Real Madrid.
Mm.
Actually, now it's 3 years in a row, but do you think that since he's played against Real Madrid so much, like it could have an advantage or maybe a disadvantage as well, since he played for Atletico and that's a fierce rivalry?
I'm not really sure if it would have any more of an advantage than anybody else. I don't think it's a disadvantage because, if anything, you know your rival, you know your opponent better than most others because he's had the experience of coming up against Real Madrid fairly regularly over the last few years in the Liga. So I guess it just kind of depends on what role he's given or how he feels as though he can best take advantage of whoever is in front of him. Given that there's probably some kind of history in the sense that they've come up against one another in the past whenever Atletico Madrid played against Real Madrid, but I'm not sure that there would be any kind of advantage in that sense of him having been a former player in La Liga and knowing Real Madrid maybe better than others.
Yeah, makes sense. And then what do you think would be the key in this game? And then adding to that, who do you think is going to be the key for both sides?
Well, Vinicius, I would say, is going to be the one to watch out for because if he's having his day, he's virtually unstoppable, even if you know what he's going to do, because we all know what he's going to do. And we all know that Real Madrid like to get the ball to him. He's pretty much their number one resource in attack. It's get the ball out wide to the left, get it to Vinicius and let him do his thing. So if he gets in a 1v1 situation, he tends to do extremely well. And if there's space in behind the defense that he can run into, in a 1v1 situation then with the goalkeeper, then you're usually in a world of trouble because he's now figured out how to have an end product and he tends to make the right choice. And so he's been scoring quite a lot of goals this season. So I would say he's got to be the biggest danger man for Real Madrid because, like I said, Karim Benzema just kind of is not really at his best level. He's a little bit off the pace. He's obviously been struggling with those injuries, as we said. He's still scoring goals and still has a pretty decent return, all things considering. But I think right now the most decisive player for Real Madrid is going to be Vinicius Jr. As for Chelsea, I have to be completely honest with you. I haven't really been watching them too much this season, so I can't really tell you who I think is going to be the most important player for them. But maybe it could be Joao Felix. I mean, who knows? But I have to be honest with you. I'm not. That's more your area of expertise.
But
Let's say when it comes to
that's
Chelsea.
perfect. Don't worry. And you raise a really good point, like who is going to play against Vinicius Jr. because last year when Chelsea faced Real Madrid, we actually saw Thomas Tuchel play a back 3/5, but Reece James played the right center back instead of the right wing back, and I think that was partly in order to deal with the pace of Vinicius and not get like caught up on the like high up on the pitch. So I think that would potentially be really interesting point to see kind of if Frank Lampard does the same because he had selected a back four mid at the weekend, which I was quite surprised about because I would think that he would maybe tinker with the formation that he was going to play, and the back 3/5 is the formation that we've had the most success with season and with this squad. So that's definitely one to keep out for. And also for all of my Chelsea fans watching, Thiago Silva has trained for the first time in weeks. Like I didn't think that he was going to be ready for this game, but he's trained. Frank Lampard said that he's fit. So maybe if we see him, I don't know if he's going to start. I don't know if he would just be like thrown into the firing line after 4 to 6 weeks or whatever, but
that's a very big risk. I mean, if anything, if I were Frank Lampard, I would probably reserve him for Stamford Bridge because
that makes sense as
it might be a little bit too soon, but you never know. I mean, obviously he'll see what he's seeing in training and maybe he feels that Thiago Silva is better than somebody else in that position right now. So
yeah. So just to wrap things up, do you think that there's, I don't want to say like any hope for Chelsea, given like our recent form and how things are going in the league, but like, how do you see this game going down, and what is your prediction? Like, can Chelsea get anything out of this match?
I think in the first leg, to be brutally honest with you, I think Real Madrid will win. On paper, they're the favourites. They're playing at home. They don't often lose at the Santiago Bernabeu. And they're the reigning champions.
Yes.
And like I say, for them, it's so mental. It's so psychological. It's so emotional that it takes them to a whole nother dimension that oftentimes it's not even really about the football. And even Rudiger, he was interviewed the other day, and he said, when I came to Real Madrid, I finally really understood what it was all about. But when I was on the opposite side, when I was playing for Chelsea, there was a moment in the game when I thought, oh my God, they're coming for us. And that's how most teams feel about Real Madrid. So if that's what you're thinking, then in some senses, you've kind of already lost. At least you've lost the psychological battle. And in some ways, you're almost allowing Real Madrid to have that moment where they can produce something and score. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden, either you've drawn the game or you've lost or whatever. And that's the thing. Real Madrid are ruthless, and they know exactly at what moments they need to appear to get the result that they need to get. And I think with all of the fans behind them, with Carlo Ancelotti potentially having his job on the line for next season, and the fact that they can make it 2 wins on the trot in the Champions League, and against a Chelsea side that you can tell me better than I can say, but I imagine, even though this is a really talented squad, I think there's so many quality players within it. They're just not at that quite elite level yet. And I think we've seen that in the Premier League. And I'm not so sure that they're playing as well as they did a year ago whenever they faced Real Madrid. So given everything else that's going on off the pitch as well for Chelsea, I'm not sure that this is the right moment for them, unless they somehow find some kind of inner drive to say, you know what, in some ways we almost have nothing to lose because we're 11th in the Premier League. We're 12 points above the relegation zone. Not that they're going to get relegated, but we're not going to be in the Champions League for next season. So let's just go out there, give our all, and actually see if we can stand Real Madrid. Yeah. So Stamford Bridge may be a completely different story, but I think at least in the first leg, it'd be very difficult to pull the wool over the eyes of Real Madrid, and I do think that they'll walk away with a win.
Yeah, and I think most people kind of feel that, like, most Chelsea, like, we know that we're the underdogs. It's Real Madrid in the Champions League, so it is difficult. But I always have that, like, little semblance of hope, like maybe we'll be able to pull off a miracle. But we'll see. It will make for an entertaining game, I'm sure, whatever the outcome is. But Semra, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time after a long day of work, and just let everybody know where they can find you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, so on Twitter, you can find me just Semra Hunter, both names together. On Instagram, the same thing, Semra_Hunter. And then you can find me as well on Facebook or on YouTube. Or yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Or on La Liga TV as well, of course, depending on where you are. So enjoy the game and good luck, everyone.
Thank you, Semra. Thank you. And thank you guys for tuning in. I really hope that you enjoyed this match preview as much as I did. Hope that you guys enjoy the game and have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever time you're watching this. And until next time, I'm out. Bye.